breaking news. Now, live from WAVY News 10.
That breaking news, Norfolk Police Officer Brian Jones shot and killed on the job last night. Another officer in the hospital. The good news out of this, that officer is expected to recover. Welcome to WAVY News 10 at 7 a.m. It's been a busy morning here. As you just saw in our last hour, police updated us on the death of a Norfolk police officer killed on the job. Another officer, Officer Curtis Allison, was also shot. He is in the hospital and expected to recover. This started at around 10:30 last night with 911 calls about shots fired. Officers responded to that scene. We do know at this point that a 17-year-old boy was also killed. His name was Mark Rodriguez. The officers on that scene responded. They chased down the suspect, James Brown. James Brown abandoned his vehicle. The officers found him at his home, and that's where he shot at the officers with a high-powered rifle from his doorway. Again, the names of those officers are Brian Jones and Curtis Allison. Curtis Allison is expected to recover. We do have a reporter on the scene at the police department. We're going to go to him right now. This is our investigative reporter, Chris Horn. Chris, can you bring us up to date on what we know at this point?
Sure, Lex. We actually do have an update on the officer who was wounded, 28-year-old Curtis Allison. He was treated and released. He is an 8-year veteran of the force. Officer Brian Jones, who was killed in the exchange of gunfire, was a 5-year veteran of the force. Earlier, we had the press conference, as you mentioned. Chief Michael Goldsmith detailed how this entire process unfolded, involving multiple scenes. Let's hear from the chief.
On May 30th, 2014, at approximately 10:48 p.m., 29-year-old James Brown began firing a gun at vehicles from behind the vehicle of a Jeep he was driving in the 8400 block of Chesapeake Boulevard. One of the bullets struck 17-year-old Mark Rodriguez inside his car. Rodriguez died at the scene. Brown continued to fire randomly. Several 911 calls came into dispatch, and multiple police units converged on the area. Within minutes, Norfolk Police Officer Brian Jones located Brown's unattended vehicle in the 7400 block of Wellington Road. Officer Curtis Allison, who was off duty at the time, responded to assist. Moments later, Brown began firing a high-powered rifle from inside his home. Officer Jones was struck several times. Officer Allison was hit attempting to help Officer Jones. Both officers were taken to Centerra Norfolk General Hospital for their injuries. Brown fled the scene after shooting and threatening a family member. Another officer observed Brown's vehicle speeding northbound on Galveston Avenue. The vehicle sped across East Little Creek Road and hit another car. Brown left his vehicle with the gun in his hand and refused to comply with the officer. Brown fought with the officer and attempted to disarm the officer. The officer fired his weapon during the struggle. Brown was pronounced dead at the scene. Officer Allison was treated for a gunshot wound and is expected to make a full recovery. Despite gallant efforts by police officers, paramedics, and the medical staff at Centerra Norfolk General Hospital, Officer Brian Jones succumbed to his injuries. Officer Jones is survived by his wife and 2 young sons and a young daughter. He loved his job, he loved his community, and will be sorely missed by everyone who knew him.
Those are the words of Chief Michael Goldsmith. Now, the update, as I mentioned earlier, that Officer Allison, Curtis Allison, was treated and released. He is recovering from his gunshot wounds. We do not know the name of the third officer, the one who killed the suspect, James Brown. We don't know much about Brown other than he was driving a Jeep, he was armed with a high-powered rifle, and that he killed Mark Rodriguez in the 8400 block of Chesapeake. Brown had one weapon as far as we know, and police tracked him to his residence on Wellington, and that's where they encountered him, and that's when he started firing at officers, the fatal shot that killed Officer Jones and the shot that wounded Officer Allison. And we'll try to get more on this information, piece together some of the loose ends on this throughout the morning. We'll have that as soon as we get it. We'll have it for you. Live in Norfolk, Chris Horn, 10 on your side.
All right, and as Chris mentioned, we do have a team here working to get more information on this, looking up the background on that suspect, James Brown, and looking to find out more about Officer Brian Jones, who was killed. Let's take you back to last night. You can see in this video this was absolutely not a normal crime scene. Our photojournalist Ferlin Webster was there. This is at Tidewater Drive near Wellington Avenue. As you just heard, Wellington Avenue is where officers found that suspect. You can see the officers there. Most of them, of course, armed with guns. Others had sniper rifles or dogs, and we also see them in plain clothes. Right now, Norfolk Police, again, along with 10 on your side, we're still gathering information on this story. Late last night, police made a plea for anyone with more information to come forward.
Everything that we can to make sure that we get all the information that we need. We're asking witnesses who are in this area or were in the vicinity of shots fired to please contact police or the crime line. This is a very transient urban area, so we know citizens saw quite a bit and they heard things. So we're asking them to please come forward to help us with this investigation. We have an officer who was lost in the line of duty, and right now our thoughts and prayers are with his family.
We did, of course, learn many more details this morning, but officers tell us this is still very much an active investigation and they are still working to learn more. Of course, this was a chaotic scene, and not just for officers, but for anyone who was around and saw all of this happening. Our Jason Marks was on the scene. He talked to a witness about what he saw.
What happened? We were inside the stores, about 9 of us, getting the last minute of playing lotteries, waiting in line, and we heard a loud gunshot, which everybody thought it was firecrackers. And I said, no, it had a ringing in the ear. I said, that's live firing. And then we had rapid fire. So we all got down, so get down. We all kind of got down and hid behind certain things, and then it subsided. Everything went closed. We closed the door. The young lady said, pull the gate to. And we just waited, and then she called the police. After that, we just stayed fast, and eventually everything got quiet. We peeped out, the coast was kind of clear, and we were talking about it. Then probably about 10 to 15 minutes later, we heard shots fired behind it. Sounded like the back of the shopping mall. So after that, we dispersed.
And we can show you more of what that scene looked like last night. You can see cars smashed along the road. We do know the police chief told us that the suspect, James Brown, hit at least one car when he was being chased by police. And you can also see shell casings out there, and very much an active scene at that point.